Hi, I'm Nat.
And I'm Guy, and the Tate brothers coming to America, much like the Eddie Murphy movie, and the Epstein files, as well as 15 minutes starting in Spanish with the beautiful Nat. But before she goes, I do want to say she's probably going to talk about Andrew Tate and Tristan Tate coming to America. We have opposite opinions on this. I love them. She hates them.
We have differing opinions.
Yeah. Well,
I'll leave it at that.
If you don't like what she has to say, wait for my English analysis. Okay, we'll go over to you now.
Ok, nada más, no son opuestas, es nada más diferente, pero sí, la noticia, pues, yo creo que número uno en por lo menos círculos conservadores, etcétera, es que, pues, el señor Andrew Tate y su hermano Tristan Tate llegaron a Estados Unidos después de haber estado, pues, no captivos, pero casi en Rumania, porque aquí se les dice, como dice en el artículo, que se le enfrentan cargos de transportar personas de forma a la fuerza y hacer cosas feas con mujeres. Estoy tratando de que YouTube no me tire, YouTube no me tire el en vivo. Entonces, ¿qué pasó? El polémico influencer Andrew Tate y su hermano Tristan llegaron este jueves a Estados Unidos tras salir de Rumania, donde enfrentan cargos de portarse mal con mujeres y mover a personas menores sin su consentimiento y blanqueo de dinero. Andrew, de 38 años, y Tristan, de 36, han negado rotundamente las acusaciones en su contra. Los dos partieron de Bucarest en un jet privado a primera hora del jueves y llegaron a Florida horas más tarde. Y dijeron, y también hubo, justo en cuanto aterrizaron, básicamente hubo una controversia porque el gobernador de Florida, Ron DeSantis, dijo que pues no quería que estuvieran en su estado ni que deberían de estar en Estados Unidos por los cargos que enfrentaron. Sin embargo, y aquí es donde se pone interesante la situación, porque cada vez que los han acusado y que han tenido cargos en su contra por parte del gobierno rumano, que es donde residían y tenían una mansión y muchos coches y los jets y etcétera, cada vez que les ponían cargos y que se iban a juicio, terminaban disolviendo el juicio básicamente por falta de evidencia, y también hay un involucramiento interesante por parte del gobierno del Reino Unido, de donde también tienen pues algo que ver con el Reino Unido, y que ahora el Reino Unido los quiere extraditar para darles cargos en el Reino Unido. Ok. Y aquí es donde vienen los sentimientos encontrados, porque, no terminé de decir qué pasó con Ron DeSantis. Entonces dijo que no autorizaba que estuvieran en Florida y que no podían estar ahí y que encontraran otro lugar para estar, pero la cosa es que son ciudadanos americanos, entonces ahorita no tienen ningún cargo por parte de Estados Unidos, ni se ha hecho ninguna orden de extradición, ni nada por el estilo, entonces tienen todo el derecho de estar en territorio estadounidense y en pues, cualquier estado, porque no hay nada en su contra en Florida en sí. Entonces, que Ron DeSantis salga a decir que no pueden estar ahí cuando legalmente tienen todo el derecho de estar ahí, pues muchas personas, muchos que apoyan a los hermanos Tate y hasta los que no, porque yo no los apoyo, pero también pienso que tienen toda la libertad como ciudadanos sin tener ningún tipo de cargos en Estados Unidos, por ahora por lo menos, de pisar y estar donde quieran. Además de que parece que en Florida, porque Ron DeSantis dice que no quiere que este tipo de personas estén en su estado y que asco y etcétera, pero curiosamente en Florida también reside, bueno, además de que residen muchísimas personas de, ¿cómo se podría decir?, de procedencia interesante y que hacen actividades interesantes, en especial en Miami, pues parece que también en Florida reside el CEO o el dueño del sitio Solo Fans, si me entienden, solo en inglés fans. Entonces, pues es un poco hipócrita de su parte que ahorita pues, Solo Fans también trae muchísimo negocio y que todo ese negocio y los impuestos y etcétera estén pues también alimentando al estado de Florida. Y el hecho de que hayan podido salir, pues es justamente porque los cargos pues no tenían grandes sustentos y todo lo que les trataron de hacer, las varias veces que también pasaron varios meses, años, creo casi un año o varios meses en la cárcel en Rumania, mientras todavía no había evidencias o juicios concretos, y cada vez que han tratado de imponerles más cargos y de decir que han hecho más y más cosas, la evidencia y las personas, las víctimas que los acusaban, pues deciden no salir a la luz, no salir a los juicios, no dar ningún tipo de testimonio. Entonces, pues siempre se caen los juicios al final. También, una vez más, hay un involucramiento ahí con el gobierno del Reino Unido. Y este señor, pues obviamente es súper controversial. Cada vez que hay algún artículo sobre él, es el influencer controversial, etcétera, etcétera. Y se volvió, por si no sabes quién es, y qué bueno, se volvió muy controversial porque yo, en mi opinión, y todo esto sí ahora va a ser mi opinión, es un síntoma de un problema muy real que hay, por lo menos en países del oeste, pues Estados Unidos, Canadá, etcétera, donde por los últimos 20, 30 años se ha estado demonizando y satanizando a los hombres, y en especial todo esto termina recayendo pues, en los hombres más jóvenes, en adolescentes, etcétera, y en muchos chavos, suena como señora viejita, y hay muchos chavos que se sienten alienados y como que no son parte de la sociedad y que son un asco para la sociedad, y por ende también de muchas mujeres que siempre ven a cualquier hombre como si fueran lo peor del mundo y todo es su culpa y tienen privilegio y no se merecen lo que tienen solo por ser hombres, etcétera, etcétera. Entonces, este señor salió a decir ya hace bastantes años y se volvió más y más famoso en estos últimos años, a decir que los hombres no merecen este tipo de tratos, etcétera, etcétera, pero donde yo difiero con él y donde digo que es un síntoma, pero no es una cura para el problema que hay, es que se enfoca mucho en cosas que no van con, digamos, los valores y moral que, en mi opinión, llevarían a un hombre a tener una vida más amena, saludable, donde se le respete, etcétera, etcétera, porque todo lo basa en torno a dinero, mujeres, chichis, etcétera, y que todo el valor de un hombre nada más queda en cuánto dinero tiene y cuántas mujeres puede tener a su alrededor y cuánto puede hacer que su esposa haga por él, que debería de ser algo mutuo, no nada más. Y eso también viene en doctrina cristiana y católica, que es un esfuerzo mutuo. Entonces creo que le está dando expectativas muy altas a todos los hombres que lo siguen y en especial los jóvenes que lo siguen, de qué esperar y qué necesitan tener y hasta dónde tienen que llegar antes de poder ser respetados, en vez de guiarlos. Y aquí, pues, por ejemplo, se podría decir Jordan Peterson, no importa qué piensan de él, pero también han equiparado a Jordan Peterson con Andrew Tate. Y yo creo que ahí sí es donde difiere mucho, donde él primero dice, tú tienes que sentirte bien contigo mismo antes de ir a buscar todo lo demás. Mientras que Andrew Tate lo que normalmente está diciendo es que necesitas cosas externas que te validen como hombre antes de poder salir a ser un buen hombre o tener cualquier tipo de valor de hombres. Y esto viene en el mismo discurso de mujeres de alto valor y hombres de alto valor y puras cosas que no tienen, y muy parecido a la izquierda, no se basan en fundamentos y morales ni nada que tenga realmente cimientos en la realidad o que tenga real valor para las personas que lo intentan buscar, porque todo se basa en cómo te ven en el exterior, qué es lo que los demás piensan de ti y qué es lo más elevado que tú puedas alcanzar, sin pensar en cómo tú mismo tienes que hacer cosas también para cambiarte a ti mismo, a tu entorno, las cosas que haces, etc. Entonces, mientras sí veo que es un síntoma de un problema muy importante que hay pues, en todas las sociedades y que sí deberíamos de valorar a los hombres, respetarlos, darles su lugar, no quitarles sus lugares, sus cosas, al igual que los hombres no deberían de entrar a sentirse mujeres y declarar que son mujeres, pues es lo mismo, y que demonizar al 50% de la población o satanizar al 50% de la población no ayuda de ninguna forma, al igual que de ese lado tampoco ayuda a satanizar a las mujeres, es lo mismo, es el mismo lado, son dos caras diferentes de la misma moneda. Entonces, ahí está mi opinión sobre este hombre, pero pues sí pienso que todos los juicios que han habido en su contra, todas las evidencias que siempre faltan, todos los cargos, la forma en la que se refieren a él en los medios, de que como si ya hubiera sido declarado que hizo todas estas cosas horribles que dicen que hizo, pues tampoco ayuda, y ahí sí estoy pues de su lado, de que deberían de haber juicios, evidencia, etcétera, concretas, porque de ahí también se cuelgan y salen muchas cosas como el movimiento del Me Too o Yo También, y todos los movimientos de feministas diciendo que ahora nada más mirar es acoso y colgándose del dolor real de muchas víctimas que sí pasaron por cosas horribles para decir que pues ellas también, y que este hombre que no me cae bien pues es lo peor del mundo. Lo vimos ya con varias otras celebridades como Johnny Depp, que terminó siendo que Amber Heard pues sí estaba para amarrarla, estaba completamente loca, pero le hicieron caso por quién sabe cuántos años. Al parecer no aprendimos de eso, y también empezamos ahorita con el señor Tate, cuando sí ha hecho bastantes cosas muy asquerosas. Estoy de acuerdo con lo que ha hecho de sus solo fans y de tener negocio con eso. Pues no, obviamente, y su nuevo giro a volverse musulmán pues también es todo otro rollo, pero el hecho de que también están usando y diciendo cosas para tirarlo del poder, donde no hay evidencias concretas todavía, aunque han tratado de fabricarlas, pero ya sí se mete uno a ver realmente los cargos, lo que estaba pasando con las cortes en Rumania, con pues, el tiempo que estuvo preso, no hubieron fundamentos, y por eso terminó saliendo. No es como que se escapó, lo dejaron ir porque no pudieron sustentar sus propios argumentos el gobierno rumano. Y pues también ahora lo vemos con Justin Baldoni, Blake Lively, todo ese caso donde están tratando de acusar a alguien que también sin evidencias, y terminó ahora saliéndoles al revés todo. Entonces, en ese punto, pues sí estoy de acuerdo de que se necesita hacer un proceso justo, en especial cuando se va a condenar a alguien de esta manera. Y Guy mencionó rápido, y ya lo dirá bien en inglés, pero él tiene una teoría, no sé ni dónde ponerla, pero tiene una teoría de que Andrew Tate en específico, y por también la situación del papá de Andrew Tate y de pues lo que hacía ese señor, tiene una teoría de que este señor podría ser un espía para Estados Unidos. Él ya explicará bien por qué. Hay varias cosas que podrían evidenciar que esto fuera cierto, pero él lo explica mucho mejor que yo. Y una vez más nada más quiero dejar dicho que su síntoma, o él ser síntoma de toda esta cultura que ha habido en contra de los hombres, solamente se puede pues, curar, digamos, al decir que ambos, voy a sonar como feminista, de que ambos, hombres y mujeres, tienen valor, pero tienen roles diferentes, obviamente, y tienen virtudes y cualidades diferentes, y eso no está mal, pero satanizar al sexo opuesto no ayuda de nada, ya seas hombre o ya seas mujer. Entonces, ahí está mi opinión sobre eso. Y tenía otra historia que a ver si puedo hacer bien rápido, pero los archivos publicados sobre Jeffrey Epstein no incluyen ninguna novedad impactante. Aquí rápidamente quiero decir que en el en vivo de ayer, me parece, hablamos sobre que iban a publicar estos archivos del señor Jeffrey Epstein, otro señor asqueroso, que él pues parece que sí, fue bastante obvio que hizo cosas muy malas, pero habían prometido, la fiscal general de Estados Unidos, Pam Bondi, había prometido que iba a sacar estos archivos, estaban tardando mucho tiempo, y dijimos que probablemente lo que iban a sacar eran nada más registros de vuelo y quienes estaban ahí, pero tenían que obviamente sacar cualquier nombre de víctimas o personas que no deberían de salir al público, pero pues las que sí estaban haciendo cosas asquerosas sí deberían de salir al público. La cosa es que terminó haciéndose como todo un show donde invitaron a comentaristas políticos y personas de medios alternativos a la Casa Blanca, donde se les dieron estos archivos. Y en mi opinión, o sea, está bien, pero ¿por qué no lo pudieron haber puesto para todo el mundo en una página web donde se sigan subiendo archivos? Lo quisieron hacer, en mi opinión, un poco como todo lo de los Twitter files, y cuando sacaron todas las evidencias en contra de Twitter y todo lo que estaban haciendo y la wokeificación extrema que traían en Twitter y la corrupción, y lo sacaron en artículos, y se siente como que estaban tratando de hacer eso. También el hecho de que se hayan tomado como tantas fotos con las carpetas blancas y etcétera, pero no han salido a decir realmente nada los que sí tuvieron los archivos hasta ahora, que ya salieron a decir que pues no había nada nuevo porque eran datos de vuelos que ya se sabían, ya habían salido a la luz durante el juicio de Ghislaine Maxwell. Entonces, bueno, hay que esperar a ver si siguen sacando más cosas, a preguntarse por qué, si lo prometí, fue promesa de campaña de Donald Trump y Pam Bondi y Kash Patel, que es el director del FBI, ahora ya confirmado, por qué no están nada más sacando todo así como rápido. ¿A quién le están tratando? ¿Hay alguien a quien le estén tratando de hacer un favor? Quién sabe, tenemos que esperar. Pero básicamente, si quieren entender un poquito mejor también mi opinión sobre Andrew Tate, regresando ya para cerrar, hoy Candace Owens, es también comentarista política, etcétera, se llama Candace Owens. Si no saben quién es, búsquenla. Si hablan inglés, le pueden poner, si no hablan inglés, le pueden poner subtítulos, pero todo lo que dijo hoy sobre los hermanos Tate, estoy completamente de acuerdo, y era lo que estaba tratando de decir ahorita también, de que pues, procesos judiciales y jurídicos se tienen que llevar con honestidad y no se puede condenar a alguien antes de que salgan evidencias o empezar a tratarlos como criminales antes de que la evidencia concreta salga a la luz. Entonces, vean el episodio de hoy de Candace Owens si les interesa saber más. También parece que, justamente hablando de la justicia, habló sobre cómo el caso de Harvey Weinstein, ese magnate de las películas, productor, etcétera, dueño de estudios, puede que hayan más cosas que no salieron a la luz y que algunas cosas por parte del juicio y cómo se fue enjuiciado no fue 100% honesto, pues, o que hay evidencia que tal vez pueda ayudarlo ahora. Entonces, eso ya me pasé, pero si se quedaron nada más a lo de español, muchísimas gracias, buenas noches. No se enojen conmigo demasiado por lo de Andrew Tate. Una vez más, creo que nada más es el hecho de que él es el síntoma y que ha llevado a que muchos más salgan a tratar de hacer lo mismo y dar un mensaje que pues la gran mayoría de los jóvenes a los que les hablan pues o no entienden bien o no les va a beneficiar a la larga, porque es imposible llegar a ser Andrew Tate, aunque dicen que sí pueden. Entonces, ahí va mi mensaje. Pero muchas gracias, buenas noches, cuídense y nos vamos a inglés ahora con Guy para que dé la otra opinión.
And welcome back to the English version.
I'm sure you heard me say Tate like 20 times.
Well, yeah, that's the major story of the day, and yeah. I'm sure there's going to be
one of the major stories. There's others.
I'm sure there's going to be plenty of opportunity to talk Andrew Tate in the future because he's going to be making the podcast rounds around the United States. I believe he's going to rehab his image from what it was more what it became in Romania. I believe Andrew Tate, Tommy Robinson, and Conor McGregor are going to create a masculine revolution within the UK and Ireland, and we'll see what happens. But what was your basic opinion on it, Tate? I know we talked about it a long time ago, and I know we disagreed, but what'd you say today?
That my basic opinion is that he is he's just a symptom of something that does afflict a lot of young men and men in general, of how society has been treating them for the past 30 years with feminism and demonizing men and making them be the worst thing and the privilege, especially white men. But I believe that he is a symptom of a much deeper problem that has to be addressed, but the way he's addressing it is not conducive to or it's not actually beneficial to the men he's speaking to.
Well, we see that's where we disagree. I think he's.
But I haven't said why.
Well, continue then.
Well, because his whole ethos is about, oh yes, cars, boobs, money is what gives you value. How many women
that appeals to younger men, and then his real ethos and what he really talks about.
It appeals to younger men, but that's the thing. Then they start trying to compare themselves and don't listen to the rest of the message because they believe that what they need to get first is cars and money and women, and that doesn't.
No.
Same as with the leftist.
That's not what they believe. And that's not what he preaches.
Same as with the leftist point of view. He doesn't have fundamental values and morals that ground him in reality. No, he doesn't.
Yes, he does.
No, he doesn't.
Yes, he does.
No, he doesn't.
Okay, so Andrew Tate and Jordan Peterson came up at a similar time, and they had very similar messages. Jordan Peterson's message was a little bit more refined and a little bit more palatable for the masses. Andrew Tate's message was very, very appealing to young men. And if you're going to start a revolution in society, it's young men you want to appeal to.
But do you want that kind of revolution?
Well, we're going to get into why I think he was meant to appeal to those people. No, for years now, I thought Andrew Tate was the spy, along with Tristan Tate. His father was a very famous, well-known spy and a well-known chess player as well, a grandmaster, and he was a spy within Russia. Also,
for the U.S.
From the U.S. I believe Andrew Tate has UK citizenship, but when I say I believe he's a spy, I believe he's a spy for the US, and I believe that's why as soon as he was able to travel again, he went back to the US.
I didn't say that in Spanish.
So I think eventually he's going to go over to the UK, and they're going to have some kind of conservative uprising within the UK. Andrew Tate and Tommy Robinson both come from the same city, which is a very poor city. Andrew Tate's story, how he came up, he was a fighter originally, and then he started managing OnlyFans girls, and that's how he supposedly made his money. But what are you tapping me? Oh, the other camera. That's how he made his money, and then he became uberly famous, and I think that's one of the points where it really convinced me he was a spy, and that was, he said he created Hustlers University, and the network in Hustlers University, they made a plan to kind of hack the internet to make him the most Googled man. And I think that part's true, but I think the US government also pushed him in the algorithm, and US companies also pushed him in the algorithm, because I think he is like I said, a forward-facing spy that's making things happen, and I think he's going to make things happen in the UK when he goes back eventually. A lot of people say he's not going to go back. I completely disagree with that. We'll see what happens. But even if I believe he's a spy, I do really like his messaging, and especially once his messaging became much more refined. So much later on, early on, I've watched him for years. Early on, he had a more unrefined message, I guess you could say, where it was money and cars were put up first. Later on, he became a Muslim. Once he became a Muslim, he really started focusing on the moral values and the moral characters. Whether you agree with Islam or not, it really helped him refine his message. And him as an orator, he's probably the best orator that's online right now.
No.
Yes, as a pure orator, he's...
Charlie Kirk is way better than he
Charlie
is.
Kirk's good, but I would put Andrew Tate against Charlie Kirk any day of the week.
No.
Okay. Anyway, where are we going to go with this? The Rondo Sound. We'll talk about Andrew Tate more in the future, I guess.
Well,
but I think he's a good influence. You don't.
Because, I mean, we did get a question earlier before we even started the stream saying, please talk about if you think the Tates are bad or good role models for society and what kind of impact they will have in the future.
Yeah, and she's coming from a point saying, oh, you can't put money, girls, and cars first, but you kind of need to when you're talking to young men. You need to grab their attention. If you're Jordan Peterson, you're not necessarily going to grab young men's attention and keep it.
But he did.
No, he didn't, because now he's lost that complete following of young men.
Because he went with the Daily Wire.
And Andrew Tate not only caught the attention of young men, but he caught the attention of Jordan Peterson's daughter. And that was a huge scandal.
Yes. But the main problem in my
and if you don't know, Andrew Tate and Jordan Peterson's daughter had met in Romania, Michaela Peterson, and it was pretty obvious to me they hooked up, and he tossed her away when he was done.
Yeah. As he does with women, which is why I'm saying you can't teach young men not to value women when you don't have millions of dollars and millions of cars and jet planes and etc., because you're giving them unrealistic expectations that in the end will end up crushing them even more than the feminists
His primary message is take responsibility for your own life, and if you're depressed, start to work out, start eating healthy, start setting little goals. So if you don't listen to him as much as I do.
The thing is, he says to do all that, so in the end you can get the cars and the money and the...
There's nothing wrong with that. Now, me personally, I don't want that.
No, there is something wrong with that, because if you're enticing young men and telling them that they can achieve all of this just by working out and being a better person, then you're going to crush them even more, and we're seeing high rates of depression and ending lives of young men because they can't achieve all these things that their new influencers are telling them that they're able to achieve. Give them realistic goals. Tell them to fall in love with one woman, not a million women, because a million women will probably not be at their beck and call.
Keep preaching, preacher. Look, even if he's trying to grab their attention and say, yeah, your goal should be money and women and this and that, but he says you have to start with working out, eating healthy, and step up the ladder slowly.
Yes,
Hold on, I'm not done. Okay. So let's just say he promises that final goal of money and women, but he says you have to do all these steps first. And let's say you don't achieve those final goals, you're still going to be a much better off person starting to work out, starting to eat healthy, starting to make career goals, things like this.
Yes, I mean,
and he does talk about starting a family now.
You'll be a better person, but I mean, almost any fitness influencer or person on the right will tell them the exact same thing. I mean, Andrew Huberman, Chris Williamson,
Those people,
these other people.
Andrew Huberman doesn't appeal to young men.
He does, but
no, he doesn't.
There's this message. I mean, that's the easy part of the message. The
Andrew
hard part is
Huberman's-
what happens at the end when you actually have to go out there and try to live a life, and when you're just trying to achieve the exact same things that Tate is promising that you can, especially with his stupid ass Hustlers University or whatever it's called.
It's no longer called Hustlers University,
yes,
and I do agree that was a bad name.
pyramid scheme thing.
That was a bad name.
It was a bad whole thing when these influencers, these male influencers, are telling their young audiences to give them money and promising them that they're going to give them all the women and all the money and all the cars in the world, when it's obviously not true, but they're able. That's how they swindle. They're swindlers. They're snake oil salesmen.
Okay,
they're just selling a dream that most people
You don't
will never
have to
be able
listen
to
to-
achieve,
you- wait,
especially if he is a
hold
spy
on.
and he's getting money from the U.S. to get all these things.
You don't
that he's
have to
now-
believe everything everybody says. You take the good things and you leave the bad.
Yeah,
Andrew
but-
Tate, you
but
can
yes,
you can take whatever you want from him.
But
you
do
don't have to
think-
take everything.
I'm going to super source it now because, hold on. But do you think that young men are able to fully understand the concept of, I'll take some things, but not other ones?
Yes,
No, the youngest men are always...
They're not kindergartners. They're young
No,
men.
they're not. I'm not trying to infantilize them. I'm just saying that if your message is not 100% clear, that you may not get the results that I'm telling you will, then they will continue their whole lives trying to achieve this thing and get nowhere in life.
I talk to people about politics every day, and people don't agree with everything I say. And I don't expect them to agree with everything I say. They're going to take the good, they're going to leave the bad, and that's how you should approach everybody online. And wait, hold on. And if young men aren't doing that, then maybe they do need to get swindled so they can learn. Just like men need to get their heart broken so they can learn how to deal with women.
But will they learn? That's my whole thing.
You do learn through.
Because you have to sometimes teach people that you have to take what's good and what's bad.
You don't always learn through words. You learn through actions. So as they fall down, they're going to learn.
Yes. Fine.
So, you don't need to have a 100% perfect message. Well, I mean, maybe you do, but, come on now. Andrew Tate's not a saint. He never said he was a saint. And
he's trying to now that he's all Muslim.
And I think he's the type of person that is going to appeal to a certain demographic, and he can make a big change in the world because he can reach those people. It's not the same people that other influencers are going to reach. And he does have a baseline message that is good. We'll agree to disagree.
Except the women and the cars and the money.
I'm sure we're going to talk more about him because I'm sure he's going on Joe Rogan now that he's in the U.S. Yeah. And he's
going to make the rounds for sure.
Let's just talk about one more thing real quick. What the story was.
We have to,
What the story was actually about. Let's stop talking over each other real quick. You can go.
Well, I was going to read the news story so people actually know what's happening. Influencer Tate brothers who face transporting people back and forth without their consent charges in Romania arrive in the U.S. Influencer who are charged, but we'll talk about that in a minute, arrived Thursday in the U.S. after authorities lifted travel restrictions on the siblings who have millions of online followers. Okay. They landed in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And also, this is why Ron DeSantis got all mad at them.
Yeah, so I thought this was the big part of the story, and I think Ron DeSantis has had a huge fall from grace compared to where he was. He was set up very well to potentially become president in 2028. No more is that the case. He is looking like a Canadian conservative that has a lot of feminist tendencies. And Andrew Tate, whether you love him or whether you hate him, he is beloved within the male conservative community. If Ron DeSantis doesn't like him, he should probably just keep his mouth shut about it. Instead, he makes an outright statement saying him and the Attorney General of Florida are going to see if they can do anything about this. A lot of people might not know, but Andrew Tate is actually very well connected into the Trump family. He's personal friends with Donald Trump Jr., and I believe he had said in past interviews he's gone on hunting trips and things like that with him.
And I mean, what I did say in Spanish was that I agreed totally with what Candace Owens said today. Like, you might hate the guy, you might think it's the wrong message, you might think he's toxic or whatever. I don't think he's toxic. I think it's toxic to call people toxic. But the fact that the whole charges thing and what happened in Romania and the fact that they had no evidence and they ended up dropping a lot of the cases and they ended up trying to side with the UK government to find all these kinds of, and to coerce women or accusers to come forward, even though there was no evidence for those. I think there needs to be the procedural part of all the charges and of all the things that he's being smeared about, and saying that he still has charges even though they've been mostly dropped, or at least they've been they didn't have enough evidence to continue with the case. I think that that's the important part, the part that
you've said that
you need judicial. There needs to be. Yes.
Okay. Well, what I'm saying is we've talked about this a lot. I follow Andrew Tate fairly closely, especially his cases that have happened in Romania. And these were a bunch of trumped up charges. And time after time, these charges have disappeared. The cases have fallen apart. Witnesses have not only not testified, when they were forced to testify, they testified on Tate's behalf. These were completely fraudulent charges, and it was the UK pressuring the Romanian government to keep this up. Now the UK wants Andrew Tate possibly extradited to face criminal charges in the UK, which the UK basically did what the Biden administration tried to do to Donald Trump. They've expanded these laws and these terms, what they mean, sexual harassment and things like this, so they can eventually grab Tate in this.
What?
Try to grab Tate on charges, I guess you would say.
Trumped up charges.
It's funny, trumped up charges, because they had created that law in New York State that had never existed before in order to get Trump, and Trump was the first person they prosecuted with that law. Mm-hmm. They're trying to do something similar in the UK with Andrew Tate. And it was very interesting that schools banned the students from talking about Andrew Tate.
Yes, I was going to say
this was an unprecedented thing, and he had never been convicted of anything at that point. He's still not convicted of anything, so it's absolutely ridiculous what they're trying to do.
And they threw them in jail for a bunch of time.
Well, and
it was a year, almost. I wasn't sure in Spanish, but it was almost a year.
I can't remember how long, but it was a long time,
mm-hmm.
and they had no right to throw him in jail.
And then back to Ron DeSantis real quick, I was going to say, and same as Candace Owens highlighted today, if you haven't watched her episode today, go watch it. But she said that it's funny that Ron DeSantis is making this big hoopla about them arriving in Florida and how they're not allowed in his state and how they're disgusting people. But, I mean, we know what happens in Miami. It's not the purest, most sanctified state.
I used to live in Miami, and you're going to have a bunch of pimps and hustlers and other things.
You can't say that word, but the debauchery, basically.
Yeah.
A lot of debauchery happens in Miami, and funnily enough...
Andrew Tate will fit right in.
Hold on. Funnily enough, and this goes to prove the point, he doesn't mention, and a lot of people don't know, that the CEO of the site that is only for space fans...
Yes,
only.
They get it. OnlyFans.
You can't say that.
Okay, just go.
The CEO lives in Miami, I believe. So it's insane that he's allowing that disgusting person, but not the Tates.
Yeah, Ron DeSantis was just making all kinds of wrong moves. He really showed himself to be a Republican in name only, and that's a rhino. That's what the Conservative Party used to be. Somehow he almost crossed over, and I'm glad he's been exposed for what he is. He was still a good governor, don't get me wrong. And
yeah, he did a lot of good during the pandemic years and fighting against all that. And we have a message.
Do they agree with you or me?
Me. Maui Yoga and Wellness says, I totally agree with Nat. It's the wrong message. It's not creating a real or good change in the youth.
That's a female, I'm guessing, that wrote that, right?
I don't know. Probably.
Okay, yeah. So
thank you.
Females generally are going to agree with you on this subject matter, and males are going to agree with me.
Because females are looking for men that, yes, are well-rounded, have figured themselves out, but that are not just chasing money and other women and cars and all the luxuries in life.
That's easy to say, but apparently a whole lot of women chose Andrew Tate.
So and that's the problem.
Okay, let's go to the next story. As he makes the rounds through the podcast in the U.S., we'll be talking about it more, I'm sure.
Coming out of
and I love arguing with you sometimes, especially on camera.
Yeah, we almost never This is basically how we
But
talk day to day.
I will tell you this. I have brought her over to my side.
In what?
Because you used to think he was guilty of everything. He was guilty of this. He was guilty of that. As I followed the case and I educated you on it.
You educated me. Thank you for educating me.
You're welcome. Hustlers University right here.
You've never been involved with that. Just to clarify
let's get into the Epstein files, who was another spy.
Yeah,
yes. Yeah. Why don't you read the article here? A little bit of it.
No new bombshells in Justice Department's release of Jeffrey Epstein files, as we mostly predicted yesterday. Attorney General Pam Bondi today released government documents related to wealthy financier and disgusting person Jeffrey Epstein, but the first wave of files posted on the Justice Department website have largely been circulating in the public domain for years and didn't include any new bombshells about the moving people without their consent that has been a favorite of conspiracy theorists.
Okay, what was released was a bunch of garbage. It was absolutely nothing, and I had called that, and that's number one. But number two, their excuse was believable if you haven't been listening to what people in the administration have been saying.
It was a male, the person that said they agreed with me. Thank you.
A feminist.
No, I'm not a feminist. You know how much I hate feminists. They're the cause of all evil.
What was I saying there? It was a big nothing burger they released, and the excuse they gave was actually sounded like a legitimate excuse until I reviewed what they had previously said. So what they said is the FBI and the 9th District, I believe it's called, within New York, is kind of known as the Citadel in the Democratic Party. All the FBI agents, all the CIA agents, all the judges, prosecutors within that district are Democratic Party members and loyal to the Democratic Party. So the files were sent to that district to basically hide or destroy. A whistleblower had come out recently, said a lot of the files were destroyed and there are more files within that district. Now they're saying they were being withheld and they're currently getting the files from that district and they're firing people that were withholding the documents. Now, that sounded believable to me, and it sounded like, okay, hangovers from the Biden administration were kind of hoarding these documents and not wanting them to be released and destroying them. The only problem is I started reviewing things that Pam Bondi and Kash Patel and Trump's lawyer had said. Pam Bondi said she had thousands of documents on her desk about the Epstein case, and she didn't release thousands of documents. Trump's lawyer said today, before the files were released, she had personally seen the files, and they were absolutely shocking, salacious, and there would be prosecutions based on the files that would be released later today. She obviously hadn't seen any of the files because there was nothing in those files. The only thing that was in those files were a bunch of redacted names and stuff that had already come out in the Ghislaine Maxwell trial. Now, Kash Patel said these documents would be released on day one. I don't think anybody thought they would. Now, if this is the case and the 9th District is withholding information, okay, we'll give you a few weeks to find it out. But I really hope the public keeps the pressure on them until these files are released. Because I at this point, I don't expect much. I think these files are going to be destroyed and not released. I think the only people that actually have access to the full documents, videotapes, and recordings is probably the Israeli government at this point, because Epstein was an asset of Mossad. If you don't know what Mossad is, that's the deep state or the intelligence agency of Israel. He was completely financed by that. All the paperwork shows that. So,
and I mean, obviously, in the files, if the files ever existed, or if they've been destroyed, there's going to be names of people that are like way more powerful than even the president of the United States. So obviously, they have enough influence and enough, people around them that can get rid of them or not be released, even though it was a campaign promise. I think it might not be in the interest of anybody for them to be released. So, will they ever be released? I keep more and more every day. I keep doubting it was a campaign promise, but again, we've seen all of those not be fulfilled before.
Well, if it's up to Trump, I think it's going to be released. The thing is, I think the Democrats have destroyed a lot of this information. I think Trump wants this released because it's going to it's going to reveal a lot of the globalists within Europe and a lot of the European deep state, which he's going to have trouble going after if it's not for if he doesn't declassify certain files. And the Epstein files are the perfect files for him to do that with. He's already dismantling the deep state within the United States. Everybody can see that. USDA was a big part of that. He's currently USAID, sorry, and he's currently redacting a bunch of other deep state documents, such as the JFK assassination files and things like this.
The JFK unaliving.
But okay, let's go into the next story. Or you have anything else with Epstein? We're going to keep an eye on this, and I'm sure this story again is going to be coming up a lot. So, trans rights activists storm the Ohio State Capitol. Iowa State Capitol as lawmakers consider a bill to remove gender ideology as a protected class. You cannot protect both sex and gender identity in law as they directly contradict each other. And I completely agree with that statement. This was from an article that we had.
Yeah, Riley Gaines.
Why don't you go ahead with it?
So Riley Gaines, if you don't know, I talk about her a lot. She was a swimmer, and she champions no men in women's sports and the fact that they can't be there. But there were a bunch of trans rights activists that showed up to the Iowa State Capitol as they were considering the bill to remove, genders, which right now they don't even know how many genders there are, as a protected class, and instead just make it sex-based, which is, reality-based. And here's a video. You can see that how many activists were there, how many people have nothing better to do on a Thursday afternoon.
Oh, good. So you had the video.
To go protest, yes. Against.
So they stormed the capital, not the capital of Iowa. Now, I understand it's not the federal capital, but the way they portrayed January 6th, this could easily be portrayed as
it's an insurrection.
As an insurrection.
Yes. And let me just go back to the article. Gives final approval to a bill removing gender identity protections despite protests. Iowa lawmakers became the first in the nation to approve legislation removing gender identity protections from the state's civil rights code Thursday, despite massive protests by opponents who say it could expose transgender people to discrimination in numerous areas of life, and etc. Basically, it's just important that now they're finally coming out and saying that gender identity and sex, number one, is not the same thing, and number two, gender identity is imagined, and nobody that claims to be a woman just because of that can come out and say, sorry, I'm disgusted by them, come out and say, oh, I'm being discriminated because they're not calling me a woman. That's not sex-based discrimination.
Well, I think they finally have the right talking point, and that talking point to win these battles is you can't protect both sex and gender under law. They directly contradict each other. So you can't make laws that are going to both protect gender and protect sex, especially when one you can change on a dime based upon how you feel. So if somebody gets arrested, they can just right there say, oh, I'm a female now, and then be put in a female prison. This is happening in California all the time.
And in the UK as well, and a lot of other countries. And it's creating
a lot of grapes within prison and unwanted pregnancies within prison. These were major scandals that have been kind of kept underneath the surface by the California state government.
It happens in Canada. I've talked about it in English as well. I made videos about it 2-3 years ago whenever the channel started. So it's good that finally some reason is returning to the United States. Hopefully we'll see it returning to other countries as well even. Because exactly, you cannot make laws, especially like laws that will impact thirds, like discrimination laws, based upon someone's mental illness and their whims of what they feel like today or tomorrow.
Yeah, and the reason I had originally put this story on here was because of the video and the way it looked like an insurrection at a Capitol. And I don't believe it's an insurrection. I believe it's a protest. But I also believe January 6th was the protest. And we need to put January 6th within its context, because there's been so much propaganda put on January 6th because they thought that was the issue that they were going to defeat Trump with. Yeah. And they didn't. So now as these protests come up in state capitals all around the country, we need to really pay attention to what they are. They're protests, and let's not blow these things out of proportion. I'm not a liberal, but I can still defend these people's right to protest. But I also say the January 6ers definitely had a right to protest that day.
Yes.
Okay, and a lot of them, let's not forget, were led into the Capitol and the doors were unlocked. I understand there was a little bit of violence, but sometimes...
they were given a tour of the damn thing, by police officers, so...
Okay, let's go into the next story. Sony Pictures and Warner Brothers team up with Howard Hughes Estate for a full-size studio in Las Vegas called Summerlin. This is going to pull a lot of business away from Hollywood, and a lot of studios are starting to open up around the country, which is very interesting. I will read our next story so we can talk about both of them together. California lawmakers are introducing a bill to modernize film and TV tax credit programs. So this is huge. Okay, both of these stories kind of go together, but what do you have to say about the first one?
Well, one of the things that is being talked about is the fact that Sony Pictures and Warner Brothers, they've always kind of been going head to head, and the fact that they're teaming up, it might also indicate, and as I keep saying and keep talking about, how this, because they're failing and seeing that nothing they do works, they're having to, resort to changing their ways in ways they, I think, never imagined they would.
Well, they can also combine IP properties, but this may be a feeling out process for one to buy the other. And if I was going to say, if one was going to buy the other, Sony would buy Warner Brothers because, Sony, you have to think Sony is more than just a motion picture company.
Yeah, but their Sony Pictures division is just by itself.
I think Sony would buy Warner
Warner's
Brothers,
under Universal.
Not the other way around. They might buy Universal as well.
No,
Sony's one of the biggest.
Way too big.
Sony's one of the biggest companies in Japan.
But Universal's IPs are way better and bigger than Sony.
It's not just movies they're thinking about here.
No, but all the parks and everything. I mean, they have parks at least. Sony doesn't.
Okay, we'll see what happens, and if you're wrong, I'm going to remember this conversation.
Sure, yes.
Okay.
But the fact that they're bringing studios to other parts that are not Hollywood is is very important and very big. And I mean, working in the film industry in Vancouver, we know that they had it better off for a long time there than they did in Hollywood because of taxes, because of other conditions that they didn't have to contend with Hollywood, and the way California is run as a whole, and the fact that they're now expanding it and not making Hollywood the epicenter might also bring, different things to screen that usually wouldn't be seen if it was just made in Hollywood.
Let's talk about this a little bit so people maybe understand how the movie industry works. Sure. And Las Vegas is going to be a very tax-friendly state. There's certain regions where all the movies are filmed. So you have Hollywood, which isn't that good on taxes, but that was the initial base. Then you have Georgia. Georgia is an extremely tax-friendly state. And then you have Vancouver, Canada. And there's other regions or states around the world that have similar policies. I'll break down Vancouver as the instance because that's the place where we worked. And I know how the tax policies work there very well. So basically, they would get a almost 25 to 30% break with the Canadian dollar being cheaper. So that it was already 30% cheaper to film a movie there. That was number one. Number two, the government would give a 30% tax incentive to movie studios filming movies there. So it was 60% cheaper to film a movie in Vancouver, Canada than it was Hollywood, California. So they can film two movies for the price of one, basically. Mm-hmm. And that's why Vancouver was filming more movie and TV than Hollywood was by the time we left. Now, I think that's starting to reverse, but that was the case. Georgia's very similar on how the tax structure is structured as well.
Yes.
But they don't have the benefit of a lower Canadian dollar.
Yeah, and there was also a lot of talk about moving to Texas as well, studios opening up in Texas, and even with animation, for example, they opened, right before we left, they opened an animation studio in Vancouver, which before would have been unthinkable, but because of all the benefits that Vancouver was willing to give, or Canada was willing to give filmmakers, because of also the amount of money that came back to them, I mean, it's good that they're diversifying where they're going to film.
Yeah. Also, they choose the regions of where they're going to film because they can be easily manipulated. Vancouver can they can make Vancouver look like almost any state within the United States, and Georgia is one of those particular states that they can make it look like almost any region. And Las Vegas isn't one of those places. Mm-hmm. So when they're talking about opening a studio in Las Vegas, I think they're really talking about opening an indoor studio, and a lot of things can be filmed indoor, and if they film somewhere else in the country and they need to make up shots or have sets that are built that can be built indoors, they can film those parts within the Las Vegas studio.
And also Las Vegas is hot as balls. I was just there doing that last summer.
They're definitely creating that studio to be an internal indoor studio. So, yeah. And a lot of things are actually gearing much more towards indoor filming these days.
Yeah.
Especially
And the technology also that's coming
when
up.
you look at The Mandalorian and things like that. They're using the types of different green screens and virtual reality
screens,
virtual reality screens, things like this.
And I mean, it's funny that California just now is deciding to introduce a bill to enhance the tax credits, even though that's one of their main exports, other than oranges.
Yeah, I think Trump's going to become very protective over the film industry. So I think the Canadian film industry is really going to start to die. I think he's going to start putting tariffs on this, and he understands the power of Hollywood, but not just Hollywood, movie studios in general. So I'm thinking under the Trump administration, you're going to see a revitalization of the movie industry.
And I speak about this on my video that's supposed to come out tomorrow, hopefully, about the Oscars and how
tomorrow, Saturday.
No,
because
tomorrow.
There's no
I have
way
to
you're
edit
going to be
it,
done.
but it will be done. That will be done. But yes, Hollywood movies, etc., have been used for millennia, or since they were created, not millennia, to propagandize and to put in messages that not just the filmmakers, but also governments, activists, etc., want to put out there. It's the best vehicle to do so.
Okay, the next story is another Hollywood story, and it's Paramount Global. The latest to shift their DEI policy. But when looking into the story, what you find is they're just trying to hide their DEI policy and rebrand it into Bridge.
Same as what I said about Disney.
And it's the same thing Disney's doing, and they're going to really. Not only the Trump administration, people like Robbie Starbuck are going to have to keep outing these companies, and there's going to have to be bans on their products in order to get them to firmly change.
Bans or at least like boycotts. So people
boycotts.
Realizing what's happening. But yes, so in a memo to staff today, Paramount Global co-CEO George Cheeks, funny name, Chris McCarthy and Brian Robbins advised on changes in the way the company approaches inclusion moving forward. The latest to capitulate, et cetera, et cetera. As a result, some of our policies must change to comply with these new mandates. So they're kind of blaming it on Trump, but I mean, we all know that it's also because go woke, go broke, and because all the other ones are doing it. So now they feel safe enough to go ahead and say these stupid ideas we had that were brought in by activists that we let in through the front door are not working. Yeah,
there was a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of ideology, and a lot of people that are in the positions in these companies. It's not going to be easy to get rid of.
No.
And they're thinking they can hide out until Trump's done, and then the country will go back liberal.
Yeah.
The problem is Trump's doing everything right at this point, and he's clearing out the government, and he's making major reforms. I definitely see a J.D. Vance or something like that, somebody like that coming next. So you could have a potential decade of true conservatism within the United States and patriotism. So,
or at least the closest approximation to conservatism.
I don't think until after the next election will you see a complete reform in a lot of these companies. I think a lot of them are going to try to secretly hide these programs.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, let's go into the next story, and that is, do you have the next story?
Yes.
Okay, why don't you...
So a man who said he was upset with Musk and Trump, charged with threatening to burn down XAI. Why do they keep calling them weird names? Facility.
What do you mean, weird name?
XAI?
It's AI, but
X, I know, but it's
under
stupid.
the X company.
I know,
because the supercomputer is being built for X.
Even his name is his name. Even his child is called X.
Whoa! Don't make fun of children.
I'm making fun of the name he chose for him. So yes, a Tennessee man has been charged with an act of really bad things after he threatened to burn down an XAI facility because he was upset with its founder Elon Musk and President Donald Trump. Authorities said Ethan Paul Early, 25, of Ashland City, was arrested and charged on February 20th after he spoke with a police officer about the threats. According to the affidavit, he was booked on bond. Records show, lawyer, blah, blah, blah. And this is the bright gentleman that decided to go do that, or to do threats.
Oh, I didn't see a picture of him. Now I have one.
He looks exactly how you think he would look, essentially.
Okay, well, I think it's very important to make an example out of this specific gentleman because you're going to have a lot of angry people right now that might not be willing to do direct violence to Musk or Trump, or at least not yet. But I could see an uprising and people having a rash of arsons on Trump hotels and Elon Musk's businesses. And especially Musk businesses, really involve a lot of government infrastructure that is absolutely crucial to the United States as far as Starlink, SpaceX, things of this nature, even X. So they really need to make an example out of this, so it does, so some kind of trend doesn't catch on, and so violence doesn't get directed towards actual people.
Yeah, and that's the thing, like when these crazy psychotic people decide to go do stuff like this, or at least threaten with stuff like this, it's not just the person that they don't like that will get affected, it's all the people that work there that basically, I mean, they're innocent people, why are they targeting? And that's the way that they decide, the left always decides to, I mean, show their anger.
They're always saying the right's the violent one, but it's not, because it's the way they keep statistics.
Yeah.
They're actually not. The left is the one, and we can see as soon as Trump got into power, the Mangione kid that did the violence in public to the healthcare executive is nuts. He's currently going on trial now pretty soon, and now we're seeing this with Musk. We're seeing a rash of trans school shooters or violence. Yeah.
School.
Let's move to the next word before I keep saying bad words.
Perpetrators, yes.
Okay, the next one is about Elon Musk as well. Elon Musk willing to go on the Jon Stewart show if the episode is aired unedited. The show said they accepted the offer. We'll see if this actually comes to fruition, because they're going to have a contract that they agree not to edit the episode.
Yeah, so it's on The Daily Show with Jon Stewart. Jon Stewart famously kind of very, very on the left, then not so much. Then he criticizes things and he backtracks. He's an interesting character, but they said that they'd be delighted. And after Stewart lambasted Musk's Department of Government Efficiency last Monday, Musk reporters took to X calling for Tesla founder to go toe-to-toe with the late-night pundit on air. Musk said to one of the users, "I will do it if the show airs unedited," and then they said, "We'd be delighted." So, I mean, if they manage to actually do it unedited, because nobody ever, like no show hosts want to seem as dumb as they actually are, we'll see if he can actually go toe-to-toe with Musk, because Musk will say anything and do anything.
Jon Stewart comes off extremely witty, and extremely sharp. The issue is a lot of that is edited, because if you watch him and it's written, a lot of it's written, but he comes off the cuff a lot. But I'm sure there's a lot of takes, because I've been to different shows that were shot live, and the amount of takes they actually do. I went to The Price is Right one time, and they actually get them to redo their surprise when they have a car or something like that sometimes. So I'm sure the Jon Stewart show is extremely edited, because in real life he's been at a couple of protests and he was engaged in some debates, and he did not look so quick and witty. So it's going to be very interesting if him and Musk go head to head. I do expect him to be well prepared for when Musk comes on the show. And he is the host, so he will have more control over the conversation and the direction the conversation goes.
Yeah.
But I look forward to it.
Yes. I'll read this one so you don't say words.
So I don't say words.
Gene Hackman and wife have been found unalived, and they say that it's suspicious enough for investigation, according to police. Because we can't say the D word.
Okay, so that's not the
Oh, that wasn't the next one? Okay.
No, that was the next one, but that wasn't the full. I did actually a lot of research on this. This kept popping up in the news today.
That it's suspicious.
It doesn't look like it was suspicious at all. It looks like Gene Hackman was in very poor health, and his wife.
I mean, he was 90-something. So, yeah.
And his wife helped him pass away, and then did away with herself and the dog. So they all went together. That's what it actually looks like. And so later in the day, they came out and they said they didn't think it was actually suspicious, because my mind actually jumped to, what the hell? All three of them, the dog, the wife, and Gene Hackman. Yeah. I immediately started thinking conspiracy theories,
yeah.
But that doesn't seem the case. Now, I do. I'm not going to.
Yeah, they were expecting like a gas leak or something like that, but.
I don't agree with people taking their lives, but I do defend the right for them to do that. I don't want to see the government get involved in anything in anything like this, like the Canadian and the UK government has, because then they really try to push it on people. The Canadian government is currently trying to push it on injured veterans when they call into help hotlines. They're asking them if they want assistance in
ending their lives.
DIE. So we see how this can go awry. So I understand people are sometimes in really poor health and they would like assistance. I don't think the government should get involved in that, but I do understand what may have happened in this situation.
Yeah.
So,
that's sad.
Yeah, it was pretty sad when I started investigating it more as well.
Yeah.
Okay, the EPA. Oh.
What?
Urges Trump to consider
EPA?
scientific findings. Oh no. Okay, so this wasn't. There was another story that you found out may have not been correct. This wasn't it, though.
Fully there, yeah.
Okay, this story is the EPA head urges Trump to reconsider scientific findings that underpin climate action, the AP says. So this is coming from the AP. The AP has recently been...
The Associated Press.
Yeah, banished from certain White House meetings and things like this.
Yeah, they're
so
not happy.
take this with a grain of salt. But overall, I definitely could see this happening. I think the Trump administration is going to want to reassess the scientific findings that have happened over the last decade.
And the EPA is the Environmental Protection Agency.
Yeah. Do you have anything to say about this?
No, I just wanted to
So this
clarify what EPA is.
This has a lot to do with climate change and the climate policies that underpin the United States. And Trump has been pulling out of a lot of these. And it really handicaps the United States, especially when they're trying to compete with China. They almost can't do it when they have certain things underpinning their society and laws and regulations.
And a lot of these climate change actions and legislation and other things governments decide to act upon usually are also, I mean, number one, probably not going to work, but number two, there's a lot of things in the background and people that get benefits and people that really want to pass certain legislation because it benefits them or they have some sort of stake in this passing, even though it might not be the smartest or best thing to do to actually combat climate change.
Well, I had always done a lot of research on green energy, and I talked to a lot of liberals, and they all had bought into it so quick and so easily, and none of the science made sense to me when they were talking about the energy output and this and that. It seemed like just a recipe for a country to really fail and not have the proper amount of energy. And now we're seeing the push towards nuclear. But I always did see one benefit to green energy, and that was it gave a lot of independence to each household. And in the situation you would actually want that is if the energy grid went down, why would you prepare for the energy grid to go down? If you were preparing for a war or something like that, you would want each individual house to have its own ability to power itself. So I always thought the United States and Europe were preparing for war with this push for green energy. It was a way to say, to push green energy, but not actually say, oh, we're preparing for war here. So I don't know if that's the case, but I'd always seen the one instance green energy really did work well is if a country was preparing for war, have its citizens engage their own homes with solar panels and other things like that.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go into the next story. We'll skip that one. But France joining the U.S. in seeking access to Ukraine minerals, says it's in talks with Ukraine. This is funny because both the EU and France just talked so much crap about Trump when he was trying to negotiate this deal for the mineral rights in Ukraine, and now they want mineral rights in Ukraine. So
the hypocrisy.
Do you have anything to say about this one?
So just read. France is also seeking access to Ukraine's deposits of critical minerals, with negotiations already underway for months. The French defense minister said Thursday, indicating that the U.S. isn't the only player. And Volodymyr Zelensky is expected to be at the White House on Friday to sign the minerals deal with the U.S.
Yeah, so this minerals deal, it's a crazy deal that's on paper. It's unlike any other deal. There are no specifics in here. They kind of just drew this thing up, so I think Zelensky and Trump can say they got a deal done. It doesn't look like any other deal a lot of other analysts have ever seen. So going into this, let's talk about the deal they originally had, the U.S. and Ukraine. The original deal was for the Ukraine to give them, the U.S., 100% of the profits until they had paid back all the loans that were given for the war, which would have been billions of dollars. Who even knows if they had enough minerals in the country? So it could have been just a way for the U.S. to really take all the money from the mineral rights deal. what was actually negotiated now, I think, is a little bit more favorable for Ukraine. What came out of it was a 50-50 split. The United States would take half of the profits. Ukraine would take half of the profits. But it's for an undetermined amount of time, meaning this could just go on forever until the minerals run out. So I don't know if it's much of a better deal, but at least Ukraine's going to need some of that money. But now with France trying to come in there, and I'm sure the EU is going to come right behind them, they may have to give the other half of their mineral rights away. So, okay. Oh, one more thing about that. This mineral rights deal was not Trump's idea. It was originally brought up to the Biden administration from Zelensky in the first year of the war as a way to pay for the war. So it was very interesting when Trump brought the idea back.
Okay.
Okay, the next one is U.S. and Russia set to reopen embassies in both countries. So the Russian and United States embassies were shut down under the Biden administration, and now talks are going very well, and they're going to reopen a bunch of embassies in Washington, D.C. and in Moscow.
And I'm sure everybody is freaking out about they're now aligning with Russia. We're going to become Russia again.
Well, no matter what happens, they need to be on good terms. So.
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, it's better, but I'm guessing it's also like a warning sign for NATO, and they might be quaking in their boots.
Even if you're on bad terms, you need to be able to talk to your enemies and things like this. Like, you need a Chinese embassy, you need an Iranian embassy. I don't know if there is an Iranian embassy, but they need to have open lines of communication. And under the Biden administration, their policy was, we don't talk to bad people. So there was no lines of communication with Iran or with Russia. Yeah, just sanctions. Yeah. Okay, the next one is Liberal surge in Canadian polls. And I actually thought this was the biggest story because it was expected that the Conservatives in Canada were going to have the largest blowout in political history, or the largest landslide in political history in Canada.
Because people were so fed up with the way the Liberals were handling themselves, and then Trudeau decided to go to the what's the name of that person? The person that basically can decide if they are going to suspend Parliament, and then he went and did that, and then we were speculating that maybe they were going to do it because they wanted to declare an emergency and then for him to stay in power forever. But now it might seem...
Okay, you need to slow down a little bit. A lot of people don't know Canadian politics.
Sorry.
And you're just spitting a bunch of random facts.
Yes.
Okay, so what was suspected to happen is they were going to call a state of emergency in Canada because of the Trump tariffs, and that would delay the election until 2026. And the Liberals are currently in power. What's currently happening right now, though, is Trump's tariff policy on Canada is causing this huge nationalistic uprise, and the Liberals are rebranding themselves as the protectors of Canada and things of this nature, and they're surging in the polls. So the idea now is they don't want to delay this election. If there was ever a time for the Liberals to have an election, the sooner probably the better. Why? Because the Liberals don't necessarily have to win the Canadian election in order to maintain power. They just have to lose by not a lot. What happens in Canada is if they do lose in the next election, but them and the NDP, which is another Liberal party, get enough votes, they can make a coalition and actually run Canada as the losing party, which is insane.
Yes.
Well, and as the polls are showing right now, the Conservatives may still eke out a victory, but you can't just eke out a victory. You have to have a landslide as the Conservatives if you want to change the country.
Yes. And I mean, the Conservatives and we were talking about it today as well, the Conservatives are basically just becoming the more tame version of the Liberals, which is what they shouldn't have done. I mean, they should have gone full force with the things that the people that were supporting them were kind of not demanding, but like asking for change, and that's why they were going away from the Liberals. And now Pierre Poilievre and his ilk are starting to look a lot like the Liberals and like Erin O'Toole, who had a horrible run the last time the elections came around. And for a lot of people, the PPC, the
People's Party.
The People's Party of Canada, my brain doesn't work. The People's Party of Canada was looking like the better option, and now it's looking more so, but they don't have enough support to actually, take over.
They're too radical. The only way...
they're too radical, but they're at least saying the things that the people supporting the conservatives wanted to hear them say.
The Conservative Party is still the best bet, and we'll see what happens. But Pierre Poilievre became really this slogan candidate about axe the tax, axe the tax. And it was working until the Liberals adopted all of his policies. The Liberals are now becoming conservatives on the outside, but as soon as they win that election, they are going to socialize Canada to the extreme. I believe they're going to bring UBI in and digital currency. They've already passed the legislation to do so. But what happened after that slogan was kind of hijacked by the Liberal Party, he's scared. Pierre Poilievre is scared of looking like a Trump candidate, so he's liberalizing himself. People loved his conservative policies and his conservative realist policies. They were really real policies that would work, and he talked about them. But now he's liberalizing himself, and he's looking like the last candidate that lost the election, and that's Erin O'Toole.
Yes.
This is why I said earlier Ron DeSantis is looking like a Canadian conservative, because Canadian conservatives are nothing more than liberals. Same with Mexican conservative parties. They're nothing more than liberals in disguise.
Ones,
So
don't be like Erin the Tool, please.
I'm really hoping true conservative party comes up here in Mexico, and I'm hoping that Pierre Poilievre really sees the light and starts becoming a real conservative. We'll see what happens.
Yes, there's not enough time.
2 more stories to go here. We got Trump moves tariffs to April 2nd, and this actually connects with the last story. Canada was expected to call an emergency because the Trump tariffs that were supposed to come in, I believe it was yesterday or today, and Trump delayed them till April 2nd now. So it's very hard for the Canadian government to call an emergency. So that's why it was expected that it was delayed. But
and then while doubling existing 10% tariffs on China.
Oh, wait, what? What did you say?
The headline is Trump plans tariffs on Mexico and Canada for Tuesday while doubling existing 10% tariffs on China.
So now it's going to be 20% on...
Apparently so.
I didn't hear this.
Yeah, doubling the 10% universal tariff charged on imports from China. In a Truth Social post, he said that illicit substances such as the F1 are being smuggled into the U.S. at unacceptable levels, and he said China will likewise be charged an additional 10% tariff on that date.
Yeah, these are just negotiating tools, especially when it comes to...
Well, not the one for China.
Not the one for China, but actually, hold on. When it comes to Mexico and Canada, every 30 days he wants to renegotiate something and really show them who daddy is and run their country for them is what it looks like.
Yes.
When it comes to China, he put the 10% tariff on it. Then this next 10% tariff, I think he's willing to use it as a negotiating strategy. I don't think he's going to want to over-tariff China because the U.S. economy is too linked with the Chinese economy, and the U.S. economy over the past 10 days, the stock market has really taken a hit, and Trump is really sensitive to the stock market. So we'll see what happens. Do you have anything else about this, though? Okay.
No.
I will say, and I say it again, I'm not a big fan of Sheinbaum, but she's negotiating a whole lot better than the Canadians are. So...
Yeah, as of now.
Okay, the rightful leader of Romania released from police custody and is quickly becoming a national hero for standing up to the EU and globalists who are pushing Romania towards war. So we talked about this story yesterday, and now it looks like they may be trying to prevent him from running in the next election. He won the last election, and they canceled the results, mainly because they can't have him in power because he wants to do away with the largest military base in the world, which would be the NATO base in Romania. That was the base I think they were really going to try to use to go after Russia. But that being said, he wants to take it down. Trump's in agreement with him, and he's really in alignment with the Trump administration on that. So it was interesting to see him coming out of prison today because there were thousands of people outside of the jail, and if he wasn't going to win before, he would definitely win now. So there's no way they can let him run. And the EU is just, they talk a big game of democracy, but when it comes to free speech, none of these countries seem to have free speech anymore.
Yeah.
Not the UK, not Germany, not France. And when it comes to elections, it doesn't seem like they have rigged elections.
Yeah.
Only certain people are allowed to participate.
Hyper-rigged elections.
Only certain people are allowed to participate in EU politics. If you're on the wrong side or you're on the right side of politics, they're going to exclude you from the elections. And Romania is the perfect example of this.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have anything with this one?
No.
No?
You're more the geopolitical European politics guy. But,
Okay, well, I think that was it for today.
well,
anyway.
we had one
Oh, we
kind of
did.
funny one that I think you skipped over.
Oh, you can go over any questions or comments after
Because it
as
had
well.
to do with, where
Is
am
this
I?
the HOAs?
No, it had to do more with Canada, and I thought it was going to come after the Liberals kind of sweeping and getting better in the polls, but Pride Toronto loses 3 corporate
yeah.
sponsors. In move, it connects to attack on DEI programs in U.S. So nonprofit organization says it has told shift in mandate partly behind the move, and they're blaming it, of course, on Trump, saying that the fact that for their little Pride parade, they won't have the U.S. Sponsors that they used to have is all because of Trump and him doing away with diversity and all these efforts that they've made in the past, 10 years. But, I mean, we've seen prides in Canada. Canada doesn't have a Pride Week or a Pride Month. They have a Pride season. And the fact that now sponsors are actually coming out and saying, yeah, we're not going to participate because, I mean, we've seen the light and thanks to...
Well, there's been backlash their big profit margins are within the U.S., and there's been a huge LGBTQ promotional campaigns and very small ones that happened in Canada, and the news made its way to the United States, and this created huge boycotts and things like this. I don't know if I actually like this. I would have preferred them to actually fund the LGBTQ parade because of the talk of the Canadian elections. This is gonna put. I
mean, I don't think they're losing. I mean, they're losing money. I think between $100,000 or $200,000. But
what I'm going into is this is gonna make the Liberal Party look very conservative when they're not at the parades, because the Liberal Party is front and center. Justin Trudeau is usually front and center at these parades, and it's gonna the same thing that's happening in Mexico with Sheinbaum. Trump is making her push more towards the conservative and the center, and the same thing is kind of happening in Canada. As the culture goes more conservative, the Liberals are appearing to be more conservative when they're not at all.
I mean, I think they're not. I mean, they're losing money, but it's still gonna go through. There's still other sponsors. There's millions of dollars pumped into the whole Pride season of Canada, and it is a season. Yes, and there's.
Explain what a season is to the people.
So again, as I was saying, instead of a month or a week,
hold on. It started with a day.
It started with a day, then it went to a week, then a month, and now it's a season, and it's basically all the year around.
Explain to the people.
What season means? I think they know what season means.
So in Canada, there was a Pride Day, then it turned into a Pride Month, then it turned into a Pride season, which is multiple months.
It's all of summer.
But they're actually all year round.
It's all year round.
All year round, they fly the flags on government buildings and things like this.
And then they also have the whole Trans Day and Visibility Day and Bisexual Day and.
Well, there's Catholic and Christian schools there that don't want to fly pride flags, and there's.
They get in trouble.
There's huge fines from the Canadian government and things like this, forcing them to do so.
So apparently, according to them, only Rogers, which is a huge Canadian company, Air Canada, one of the most important Canadian companies, Smirnoff and Tim Hortons, confirmed that they're still sponsoring the event, which is funny because, I mean, those are huge sponsors, but the fact that they're losing 3 is making headlines. But it's mostly, I'm guessing, to go against Trump and his DEI and saying Canada still should have DEI and we are so virtuous and we love all the people and diversity.
Yeah, well, it's interesting what's actually happening to the LGBTQ community right now. There's a huge movement online to separate the LGB from the TQ plus part of the movement. So,
I mean, we'll see. I don't think in Canada that'll take much hold because there's still, I mean, it's too entrenched within society and culture and schooling and et cetera. I mentioned before, I mean, I used to be completely the opposite. And I used to help.
The overlap with children and PDF files is the places
The
where
sticking points?
the regular people are having an issue with this. People really don't have a problem with these communities, but these communities became very politically active, and then things they were trying to press weren't the rights for their own community. It was for the rights for PDF files and to transition children. And to have... Oh,
and there is an effort, I mean, from some members of the community that are no longer members of the community that are just saying, stop it, you're making us all look bad. And I do think it's a matter of the community itself policing the most...
we have Gays Against Groomers.
Gays Against Groomers and many other people that speak out. I mean, Blair White, a lot of other people that speak out against it from the community themselves. So, I mean, I do think they have to keep doing that because otherwise, exactly, they all end up getting smeared by the stupid decisions of the most mentally ill people in that community. And listening to them just ends up worse for everybody.
Yeah, the craziest parts of the gay community is the parts that took over the public-facing political arm of their community, which didn't help them at all.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's it. Thank you for watching. We went a bit longer, 1 hour and 20, which means I have less time to edit now for the video that's supposed to come out tomorrow. Mañana va a salir un video sobre los Óscares y cómo y por qué se volvieron, pero también siempre han sido completamente ideológicos y como la ideología siempre ha estado ahí. But wait for that one tomorrow, maybe Saturday if I really can't make it, but let's hope I can.
If you haven't watched the IVF video we put out, please go watch it, give it a like and a comment if you can.
It's sad right now.
It's kind of struggling.
Yes.
We understood when we made that video it wasn't going to be the most popular topic, but it was an important video to make, and it fit in with a lot of the other subject matters
the series
we were making.
I was making. But maybe I'll cool it for a little bit on the whole IVF, abortion, all those topics that don't seem very interesting, but they are. But we'll see what
more
comes
Andrew
out.
Tate. The people are interested.
No Andrew Tate. Not for now. But thank you so much for watching, staying with us till this late if you did. And if you're watching on the replay, then thank you so much. And we'll see you tomorrow. Tomorrow's Friday.
Adios.
So have a good night. Hold on.